Put him on the news, son. Put him on the news, huh? Put him on the news, son. Whoa, put him on the news, huh?
Yo, it's your boy Dre. We finna check out that new The Boys 1950s Vought Rising trailer. I don't think I was supposed to include 1950s, but it is what it is. If you watched The Boys, let me know if you rock with the season finale for sure. I did. I'm glad that it happened the way it did. I was a little nervous like everybody else was in the last couple episodes, but they definitely tied it together for sure. Let's get into it.
Rising, ooh, it's like a little teaser trailer, and I love it. Vought Rising is the prequel series to The Boys, and as The Boys has just wrapped up, oh, I'm still very heartbroken. I'm so excited for this prequel series that's coming in 2027, and it returns with Aya Cash as Stormfront, aka Liberty, aka Clara Vought, and Soldier Boy's Jensen Ackles. I'm so excited. What's not to love about this series? So let's explore this trailer. Let's break it down scene by scene for all the little Easter eggs and missed details that you might have missed. But before we get into it, make sure to check out the latest and greatest in new Rockstars merch. Don't you want to be a nerd out in the wild with our Boys merch? We got Godolkin merch, we got Vought International merch, we just got Gen V and the Boys merch, and I know in the future we will make Vought Rising shirts, but right now, go get that merch, go rep the Boys, and then go tag us in it. All right, now let's get into it. The trailer opens with a record player, and the song playing is a very chopped and screwed version of Strange Things Happening Every Day by Sister Rosetta Tharpe, and then it reveals that it's 1950s in New York City with Soldier Boy narrating us in. Kripke has said that Vought Rising is going to be set in a very gritty version of New York City. And here's some historical context for New York City in the 1950s. This was right in the middle of the United Nations headquarters moving from Paris because at the end of World War II, since so many major cities had a lot of rebuilding to do, New York had this new significance and started to see growth in areas like art and finance and fashion. But this was also the start of the rise of crime like there was in any city that turns into a major metropolis. And the crime got worse and worse until around the 1970s. So this is a perfect place to set the Boys iteration since it's dealing with the rise of both innovation, government influence, and a fear of crime, which we know Vought profited off of. In the world of The Boys timeline, though, some important stuff happens around the 1950s. In season 2 of The Boys, the Deep got involved with the fresca-guzzling cult-like church headed up by Alistair Adana called the Church of the Collective. Stan Edgar said that Alistair's grandfather established it in the early 50s, so I wouldn't be surprised if we see that in Vought Rising. And 1950 is also when Frederick Vought stabilized Compound B and founded Vought American, which later became Vought International. In 1952, Vought American Pictures is founded, which is responsible for pretty much every superhero movie that was referenced in The Boys ever. It was also later named Vought Studios. And famously, the first ever Herogasm happened in 1952, brought to you by Soldier Boy and Liberty.
I founded it in 52. Me and this other soup, Liberty.
You can see that Soldier Boy's wearing a very early version of his costume. We loved when he wore the mask. This matches the one shown in the Vought Rising debut photos. He'll eventually move on to this hat and goggle one that we've seen before, and then to the one that we see in Payback. He's gone through
That hat and goggle one kind of cool, I ain't gonna lie.
many versions of a costume. We don't know who Soldier Boy's talking to at first, but then we're introduced to Aya Cash as Clara Vought, Mason Dye as Bombsight, Elizabeth Posey as Private Angel, and Will Hockman as Torpedo. I like the very specific detail in this shot, like Torpedo and Bombsight having already eaten their cake, but Private Angel's drinking tea, and I'm assuming this is because it's the 50s and she's gotta watch her figure. Remember the Bombsight diet pills?
Just take one with breakfast, or better yet, instead of breakfast.
Yeah, everything was problematic then. Kripke mentioned in interviews how the series tracks their leap from military to the private sector, and it's less about military discipline and more about consumerism, and then you start to see them evolve that way. So like The Boys, we'll see how Vought turns soups into a marketable and profitable industry, but also how that system was never built with good intentions. Since the story takes place in the 1950s, crossing paths with Nazis and real mid-century American racism, it's clear that this was never going to lead to anything good. Over the trailer, we hear Soldier Boy talking to someone saying he wants to fight for our flag and he wants to be a hero, and as he says this, we get close-ups of our militant heroes, Torpedo, Bombsight, and Private Angel. And it's worth mentioning that all these characters should have some kind of military background, maybe even more than Soldier Boy does. As Kripke has mentioned in interviews, it seems pretty clear that Soldier Boy was the only one who begged to be part of the trial, something that I sense we're getting a little bit of in this narration. We'll have to wait and see if there were any other lucky ones who pushed their way into Vought's trials the same way as Soldier Boy did, but for now I think it's okay to assume that most probably didn't. Soldier Boy's narration along with the trailer overall just frames that these heroes represent different branches of the US military based on their names and their costumes. Torpedo is the Navy, Bombsight is the Air Force, Private Angel I guess would be like a war nurse or the medical division, while Soldier Boy represents the Army. Today they wanted the soups to represent diversity, but yesterday they wanted them to represent America. We see a bright yellow 1950s New York City taxi cab, and this was right after the big New York taxi driver strike in 1949. Then we're with Ricky Staffieri, Kiki Lane, and Brian J. Smith.
My voice kind of dry, I don't know why.
Oh, all their roles are still pretty hush-hush, it's clear the two men work within some kind of policing, maybe investigators, maybe something higher, and Kiki Lane's character is helping them uncover the secrets within what I suspect will be Vought. I think these characters are a major focus to the synopsis that describes this series as a mystery. A little later, we'll see Kiki Lane's character shaking Bombsight's hand at some sort of press event. The two turn toward the camera for a picture, but the soldiers standing behind them don't seem too happy about it. We don't know who's being honored in this scene, but Kiki's character is wearing a medal that feels kind of out of place with the rest of her outfit, and that detail makes me think that she may have helped in some way during the war and is possibly being recognized or awarded by Bombsight for her service. Which kind of reminds me of the Tuskegee Airmen, who were the first black military pilots, but also the entirety of this trailer also reminds me of the Tuskegee experiments, which we'll get into shortly. I like that on Bombsight's jacket you can see the bombs are made out to kind of look like the American flag, and just what kind of guy is that? You know, he's kind of weird. In their trunk, they've got an old
I think he might be worse than Soldier Boy. Y'all let me know.
radio transmitter, a Morrow MB560, which in this context I assume is just for spying since it's used for long distance communication. The next shot is them twiddling with the receiver. We then see Soldier Boy out of costume. His crimson colored tie matches the color painted on the nails that we saw turning the record player at the beginning, and the lipstick Clara wears when she watches the TV. This shot actually connects with another sequence that we get later, this one. You can see in the background who I assume will be Jordan Myrie's character that we see throughout the rest of the trailer. As Soldier Boy walks past him, he very clearly takes notice, and at first this shot feels like it could be taking place at the Sage Grove Manor that we see later, because in that part of the trailer there's a lot of trees and brick walls. However, there's also a visible flagpole and what looks like a bus to be in the background, and I'm not completely certain, but these details make me think that this scene may actually be set at Fort Harmony instead. For those that didn't watch the final season of The Boys, Fort Harmony was the military base where Frederick Vought oversaw military Vought experiments, which we'll later see again in the trailer. From there, we cut to an old-timey television broadcasting Voices in Politics, another program within the Boys universe. In the middle is Private Angel, and the man on the left says this:
God blessed us with these extraordinary heroes.
The wink already implies what we, as the audience, already know, but they don't know yet. And that's that God didn't bless us with soups. Frederick Vought's Nazi experiments gave us soups. What we're likely seeing here is the early stages that narrative was being shaped at, where it became much easier to frame soups as American blessed heroes rather than acknowledging the truth, which will later be revealed in The Boys. Then we're at Sage Grove Manor. Now, we all know in the Boys universe there's Sage Grove Center, and this is the place that Clara Vought, aka Stormfront, was behind. This is the institution that swore they were helping soups when in reality it was just another facility to test Compound V on adults. And I kind of like that this kind of implies that Sage Grove was a private residence for Frederick and Clara Vought before it became a known research or medical facility. The issues play a major role in that storytelling, so it makes...
Yeah, for anybody that watched The Boys, you know they're definitely about to go there. For sure, and then I can only imagine it being set in the 50s.
That Vought Rising does the same. And this is where my note of this trailer reminding me of the Tuskegee experiments come in. Although we're probably seeing our first ever black soup, it's also giving forced experimentation on non-white people. Similar to Isaiah Bradley in Brave New World and Falcon and the Winter Soldier, whose story felt very inspired by the same Tuskegee experiments. The Tuskegee experiment began in 1932, and after being recruited by the promise of free medical care, 600 African-American men in Alabama enrolled in the project, which aimed to study the full progression of syphilis. As they monitored the trials, the men were given no care as they died. In the 60s, an investigator found out about the study and alerted his superiors on how unethical it was, and after reviewing the study, they opted to continue it. He leaked it to a reporter who passed it to another reporter who broke the story in the 70s, prompting public outrage and forcing the study to finally shut down. This is why the show, for Jordan Myrie's character, feels like the Tuskegee experiments to me. And since all of The Boys involves parodying like DC and Marvel, this character is maybe going to be similar to Isaiah Bradley overall, who was first introduced in 2003 in Marvel Comics Truth, Red, White, and Black, and then was added into the MCU. He was the veteran of the Korean War and was used as a test subject in the 1950s for the super soldier serum. We see them administer the old Compound V into this man, and I wouldn't necessarily call this the V1 since V1 is typically cloudier than this version, but it's an earlier version nonetheless. We then see the soldier just spraying in this village. Now, I don't think this is Jensen Ackles. It does not look like him, but I can confirm that this man is just killing anyone at this point. So the next shot has this boy completely getting sprayed with blood that allegedly says grilled duck in Korean, and I think this is more war propaganda to further Soldier Boy. I think this is staged and made to show us how amazing our Soldier Boy is. Or this could be a different version of Soldier Boy. There were multiple iterations of Soldier Boy like there are different Captain Americas in the comics, and this could be an earlier test run for Soldier Boy that just didn't work. And I like that idea because it goes with a theory that I have for the end of my video. Then we see a bar and what looks like a man who was looking through the peephole before the police kicked it down, and him with it. We're back with Kiki Lane, who after pressing the transmitter, the trailer cuts to a harsh signal that causes Private Angel and this suit to Shudder, and this is the sonic frequency that we saw done in The Boys and The Boys finale that incapacitates them. Additionally, this suit I think is Clara Vought. This might be Liberty, the race's suit before she became Stormfront. She wore a hood, but she also wore white gloves. Torpedo also wears white gloves, but he doesn't have the blue cuffs with the white stars. Neither does Clara, but in multiple times we've seen Liberty's outfits and they've slightly changed. So this could be like her Mach 1 version. As you may remember from season 2 of The Boys, Valerie's mother, Myron, was murdered by Liberty, and this was back in the 70s, but she tried to tell people that Liberty was a racist, but no one would believe her because Vought's gonna hide the story, and they did. It wasn't until later that Liberty went into hiding and kind of just disappeared because it was getting harder and harder to justify these racial killings, but those affected knew it was Stormfront all along. So in this series, we'll see a very racist Clara Vought transitioning into Liberty. In the next shot, we see Jordan breaking free from the restraints. This, I assume, is within Sage Grove Manor. And then Clara looks up to this man with glasses, who I assume is Frederick Vought, who had the same kind of Nazi haircut in his portrait. We then see people snapping pictures of Soldier Boy, Bombsight, Torpedo, and Private Angel. Private Angel is holding a pen, and this scene makes me want to believe it's their introductory press conference as a full-fledged team, perhaps. We then cut to Jordan's character again being shot, surviving each bullet. He has super strength, indestructible skin, and green eyes. And these guns that these guys have look like they could be World War II service revolvers. We'll see at the same location later, Clara comes in and punches him in the face, so yes, again, we'll see her beating down a black man. We cut to Private Angel where something below her explodes, and I assume it's a dick, because with this angle, and this being the Boys universe, it oftentimes is a dick exploding. We see some very cloudy Compound V, which could be V1 being tested on a cow, and we know how animals get when they're tested on with Compound V. This thicker, cloudier V looks to me like the stuff that they used in Gen V that Ethan Slater and his cronies took. We then see a bunch of scientists, and this looks like Fort Harmony, and the scientists include Frederick Vought. Then we see Brian's character, the cop, suiting up before leaving, and we then cut to Clara walking down a gravel road. In the background, you can see this man on the ground, but the passenger side door is still open. And the next shot, in the same clothes, she stands over this man's neck. So to me, she either chased down or followed these two military men. She kills the first man, the driver, and the man on the passenger side got out and ran, didn't make it too far, leaving the door open. And she caused all this destruction, as you can see when she shakes her bloody hand like it really hurt. We're then at a 4th of July celebration with so much Private Angel swag and games, not a single person of color in the audience. This looks like they're introducing Soldier Boy to the public. Also that New York skyline, what a beaut. Then we cut to Clara and Soldier Boy where she says this:
"There is a brighter future. All we need to do is take it."
Now, yes, it is weird hearing Stormfront's German accent, but she and Frederick Vought came to America after being a part of Operation Paperclip, which was when the US government took in Nazi scientists so we could get an edge over the USSR and Stalin on rocket propulsions and nuclear research. And that's where the trailer ends. So my current theory on this series as a whole, based on the trailer, on interviews, and The Boys, is that Clara and Frederick Vought have been secretly running experiments out of their own manor, Sage Grove Manor, and not just through the official government-sanctioned trials like at Fort Harmony. Seeing as the government wanted weapons for war, Vought's goals were always to perfect the serum in order to create a perfect race of soups. So essentially, while America is preoccupied with patriotism and military expansion, Vought is quietly working overtime behind closed doors. And because the story is set in the 50s, it would make sense for Vought to exploit people they deem less than. Whether that's marginalized communities or vulnerable people or even animals, the show, I think, will explore systemic racism and nationalism much like The Boys. The evil isn't all soups, it's also the system protecting them. We'll also have some failed experiment or runaway soup storyline, it looks like, similar to Kenji and The Boys, but with Jordan's character, to which Claire is forced to track them down before the truth about the experiments gets exposed to the public. At the same time, Vought is making an American superhero team modeled after different branches of the US military, where it's easier to package this propaganda as heroism. But I think this may also hint at Ben not being the original idea for Soldier Boy, or maybe not even the first one. We know Soldier Boy's brother will appear in the series, and Kripke has described the relationship as a rivalry, and I think this show may reveal they wanted the brother to originally be Soldier Boy, the real hero. So when we hear his earlier narration wanting to fight for the flag and be a hero, it's his early desperation to be seen like his brother. We see in that scene he's wearing a robe, and if he's talking to Clara, this may be post-banging or what have you, but regardless, we know they're romantic by this timeline, and they have a very romantic framing in this trailer. I think Ben's father may have opened the door, but Clara may have been the one who truly chose him, who shaped him, and helped him create the Soldier Boy identity. I think she persuaded Vought to allow him into the trials, because keep in mind, Ben's parents parents are rich, but not that rich. I don't think Vought really needs his money, but I do think he will listen to his wife. It doesn't feel like the same manipulation that Madeline Stillwell had with Homelander. I think Clara actually kind of saw potential in Soulja Boy. Even Soulja Boy said that Clara saw him as the chosen one. So I think she did kind of have a little bit of affection to him, but I could be wrong on that. That is just my 2 cents, just my thoughts. Comment down below with your thoughts on this trailer. Did you like it? Do you see where the budget went? I'm just joking, but I also am not. I do see where that money went. This is expensive. A special thanks to one of our YouTube members, TDS on a Quest, who supports us at the executive producer level. And a big thanks to Gina Polito for helping me research and write this. And also a big thanks to Alex Berg and Joshua Stephen Hurd for helping me research this as well. Thank you to Studio.
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of The Boys. I checked it out early on when it first premiered, and I watched every episode since. How I feel about The Boys 1950s is about to go there for sure. I'm definitely interested in the early look on the OG characters like Soulja Boy and all the ones we're about to see for sure. Definitely let me know if you're a fan of The Boys, and get in the comments and who's your favorite character or who you're looking forward to seeing for the show. Once again, it's your boy Trey, and we are out.
Everything black and red, everything red bone. I'm so fucked up in my head, I got a damn problem. Better fuck your plug, nigga, you know I want the head on you. Ain't no point talking about that money, there ain't no damn profit. Really, girl, I'm a demon in disguise, but when you see me, you might be as fucked up as I am, it's just the chemistry. They tell down on your name like who's to blame, it's a conspiracy.